اشياء بدك تحكيها؟ تعالي انت احكيها. بس انا بحكي اشي وبعدين انت بتحكي. طيب انت بتحكي عن وورلد اوف هوتل وبعديها انا بحكي عن السبيكرز.
اوكي. Hi. Yep. Okay, let's put this here. Welcome back, everyone. Yeah. Okay, I hope your energy level is still high. We have a long program ahead of us, very interesting one. Few announcements. We're having a very special concert today at the World Off Hotel, the very famous hotel. What's special about this concert is that it's free for all of you. We've been invited to go to watch Palestinian artists perform. So we're gonna walk to the World Off Hotel. It's a walking distance. I encourage you to join the group and to walk by the wall and to enjoy the music of Palestinians. And I guess this is my only announcement for today. That's it? Yeah. Oh, it's at 9. It starts at 9. I think we're leaving 8:30. Yeah. Throughout the day, we're gonna update more exact times.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Yes. You know, in 2008, I came to Bethlehem Bible College as a student. And since then, I almost attended all Christ at the Checkpoint conferences. I remember in 2010, I was a volunteer at the first conference. And I only missed, I believe, one, which was in 2016. But there is an observation made by participants that came up every single year, which is gender equality. And I think as much as we've tried to live up to the value of the Bible, to see the other as an equal. And we know that as Palestinian Christians, we have struggled in empowering, and I'm sorry for using this, but at a certain point we had to go beyond of our selfish patriarchy and see women as capable leader to lead us, not to walk alongside us. Actually, I would say to lead us as men. I'm proud today to share with you that we have women leaders to do so. We have young women leaders to do so. And these women are very unique. Each of them has their experiences. Each of them has their areas of expertise, but all of them have a heart for people of this land and love God and love their neighbor. In this second session of today, you are lucky, we are lucky that we will be listening to two rising female leaders in a Palestinian and Palestinian-Israeli Christian society.
Mara Sarji. Mara is a Christian Palestinian born and raised in Nazareth. She is a graduate student of anthropology at Tel Aviv University. She is interested in bringing her faith and passion for justice together through her career with an emphasis on the experiences of women in Palestine. Please, let's all welcome Mara.
Hello. My name is Marah. Usually it's a very hard name for like internationals to pronounce. So let's try together. Marah, 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's good. So, okay. I was asked to speak about this topic, Am I My Sister's Keeper? And honestly, when I was asked to do this, I had this uncomfortable feeling that sits like right about here, where it takes more time and reflection to understand why I feel the way that I do. But after some time, I realized that something is not quite right. It's not news that Palestinian women face oppression. It's not news that we face discrimination based on our gender. And today, I'm not gonna be able to speak about all of it. Oh, I keep forgetting it's there. I'm not gonna give you a detailed picture of our lives as Palestinian women. I'm not gonna give you all the reasons behind gender-based violence. I'm not gonna be able to talk to you about the differences between class, between areas of residency, and thus civil status, if you're a citizen of the state, if you're not. But I will give you a brief context of things that we should keep in mind when we talk about gender power relations and gender oppression. And then I want us to go through the story of Ruth and try to reflect through the story of Ruth on how can we be the sister's keeper. So, first of all, I think it's very obvious, at least for us as Palestinians, that we can't separate our lives as Palestinian from being women. The state of Israel, since the beginning, since the establishment, has chosen to support the patriarchy, either by the Hamula system in 1948 after the Nakba. The state of Israel and the government chose to support the patriarchy in order to contain the Palestinian population. This system still is maintained and supported by the state. We see it both in the north of Israel with the Palestinian community. We see it with the Bedouin community, where polygamy is basically a side effect of that. And we see it also here in the West Bank with the relations between the state and the authorities. And then we can't even try to imagine life for Palestinian women without looking at the occupation and what the occupation does to us. Women in the occupied Palestinian territories have to face police brutality, have to face soldiers who sexually harass them. They're sexually harassed at the checkpoints. Some of them are raped and blackmailed by police personnel. And settler violence and the things that women have to go through in order to protect their children, and staying homeless and being vulnerable after home demolitions. We can't look at gender oppression without seeing the connections that relate straight to the connection with the state of Israel. And we see that, okay, good. We see that also relating today with the policies of the state. The state chooses not to deal with crime against women. And in the state of Israel, 58% of total women who were killed by the beginning of this year were Palestinian women in Israel, who are citizens, by the way, and the police has to deal with it. But the police chooses to keep a blind eye towards it. And 73% of the women who filed the complaints were Palestinian women. And when we look at the crime rates of how many the police managed to solve, only 84% of the murders that were not solved were the murders of Palestinian women. And the police goes so far to the point of bringing back the Palestinian women who sought refuge to the police and asked for help to bring them back to their oppressors, to go back straight to their murder or their abuse, be it by the family of their partner, both men and women, and also their partners. Can I control my slides, please? Okay. Okay. So, relating to that also, I can't explain to you the oppression that I face without also connecting it to the economic disparities and the economic opportunities that we get. Women find it hard to find job opportunities because also relating to the state of Israel and the entire process of land disposition. Women used to also work in the fields as farmers, having a society that is dependent on agriculture was and still is in some parts. Women lost their independence. They lost their status in society. And thus, well, men use that in order to oppress us, honestly. And that connected with what we now see, what is the Palestinian woman. She's a caregiver. She's someone who has to be a housewife. And this correlates to this process of land dispossession. And of course, we can't look only at gender-based oppression without looking at how Palestinian men oppress us. We face physical violence, we face emotional violence, economic violence, but also when we try and fight for liberation for Palestine, we're also, our gender identity is used against us. So during between June and August of last year, during demonstrations against the occupation, Palestinian security personnel sexually harassed and attacked women demonstrators. Some of them stole their phones and then blackmailed for spreading private information, private pictures, private materials from their phone to hinder them from participating in public life. So when we look at, So when we look at our lives as Palestinian women, we cannot put a blind eye towards these processes. All of them affect our lives. And I want us now to look through the story of Ruth, to think together, how can we be the sister's keeper? How can we do that today? Please. Okay. And the story of Ruth, many of you have heard it. Many of us have learned about Ruth's virtue, how she's a courageous woman, how she did the impossible to stay with Naomi. But we learned that through it, the Israelites accept foreigners, etc., etc. But we fail to see the story of Ruth through her eyes. And once we read the story through what she has experienced, we see a story of abuse. We see a story where Ruth was used as a means to an end of keeping the patriarchy and keeping the male lineage. And we can't look at the Bible and not see the woman. So Ruth was a Moabite. And her story begins with the book of Ruth, where Naomi and her husband Elimelech travel with their two sons because of a famine in Bethlehem to the land of Moab. And there, the husband dies, the two sons get married to two Moabite women, and then they also die. So Naomi is left with only her two daughters-in-law. Now, Naomi urges her two daughters-in-law to go back to their families, to go back to their God, and then she can go back to Bethlehem. Now, we can't see also the story of why Naomi asked this without learning about the context. So the context, again, was a patriarchal society. Women needed men to survive. They needed them for their economic security, for their well-being. And here, the story of Ruth begins, basically. And so when Naomi urged her two daughters-in-law to leave, one of them actually left. But the other, Ruth, said no. She chose to stay with Naomi. And she says, "For where you go, I will go, and where you will lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." We see here that Ruth vows to stay with Naomi, vowing to leave her safety net, to leave her people, her culture, and go as a person who's an other that is considered sexually deviant, who's considered immoral to a people that might never accept her. So with that, Naomi doesn't say anything, and both of them go back to Bethlehem. When they go back to Bethlehem, we need to remember that even though they both loved each other, and in the scene before they cried and they hugged and they showed emotions when they were about to separate from each other, there is some power relations between both women. Naomi is an Israelite. She knows the people in Bethlehem. She is from Bethlehem. She has the resources. She has the network. And if she needed anything, she has it. But Ruth is a stranger. It's not just any random stranger. It's a stranger that the people of Israelites believe is immoral. They commit crimes against one another. They sexually abuse. The women there are considered to be very straightforward sexually, and they get what they want, basically. So that was not accepted through the eyes of the Israelites. And right after Ruth vows to stay with Naomi, when she reaches Bethlehem, all of the spotlight is on her. The women there look only at Naomi. And what does Naomi say? I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. We see just in this scene, what would Ruth think? The text is silent about what Ruth thinks or feels. But just imagine just leaving your entire country, your home, your people, the gods even that you worshipped, to come with your mother-in-law, and then your mother-in-law not seeing who you are. She doesn't see her in the situation. And it's just, honestly, when I was reading the story, it's very easy to go over it. You don't see what Ruth thinks. You don't see what Ruth feels. But until now, you see what Naomi feels, and you know what she thinks. But the story is very silent towards Ruth. And then after they go back to Bethlehem, again, Naomi knows the people. People know that Naomi came back. She knows what needs to be done to survive. But she doesn't do anything. She doesn't move a finger towards both of their survival. So Ruth chooses to go out in the fields, to harvest, to bring back food so both of them can live. And in that culture, in that time in the Judges, the Israelites also were corrupt and also were acting immorally, and the men were attacking the women and sexually abusing them. So Naomi knew that if Ruth went out to the field, she might be also in danger, but she didn't do anything about it. She just told her, okay, go. And we see here that, yes, she was courageous. Yes, this is the second time that Ruth did something for her mother-in-law. And she goes to the field to harvest. And here I want us to think about this. Many times when we talk about the patriarchy, we forget the role of women in the patriarchy. Women can also be gatekeepers. Naomi here in the story is a gatekeeper. She has the resources, she has the network, she knows the people. And the text clearly says that Naomi knows that Boaz is there. She knows who's there, and she knows that there is a much easier way to keep their survival, but she doesn't do anything. So when I look back now and reflect to our Palestinian community, when we say women standing together towards liberation, it sounds obvious, right? But that's not the case. It's not the case for everyone. Many women who prefer to keep their own advantage on top as a priority rather than help out the other women. They have the resources, they have the network, especially women who technically have made it. They're leaders sometimes, they're very well known in our community. It's both, by the way, in the community and in the church. So it's something that we see all around. And they choose not to help the younger women. They choose not to do this unless they see that there is something they can gain from. And we see this in the story of Ruth and Naomi. and they hold on to their resources, as I said. And then the story of Ruth continues. Naomi, after Ruth came back to her, she told her, like, I met Boaz. There's this guy who was really good to me. He protected me from the others, and he instructed the men not to touch me and to keep me safe. Naomi was happy. She's like, yes, I know Boaz. And then she saw the connection that she can actually gain from this opportunity. And she instructed Ruth to go dress up, wear nicely, shower, look the best she can, and go at night when nobody knows, after Boaz is drunk, to go and seduce him, to ask him to be her husband. Now, when we think about it, we can't forget the identity of Ruth as a Moabite. At first, we would think that Naomi would view Ruth as one of hers now. This is exactly what Ruth said. But then Naomi forgets about it, she ignores it, and does exactly the same thing that would bring back Naomi to where she was before she moved. All the toil and the work of Ruth to fix her name, to change it, to change the way that people view her, can be very much tainted in this situation if anyone knew about it. But she didn't care, unfortunately. So also, this another situation where Ruth can be put in a very bad and dangerous situation where she can be sexually exploited, even if she didn't want to. So here, we have to see a complex picture. When we talk about feminism and we talk about equal rights for women, it's very easy for us to look at things in a black and white way. The picture is not black and white. And many times women have to choose what to do according to what the system offers. We see that, yes, there is power relations between Naomi and Ruth, but they stuck together. We see that at the beginning, Ruth was offering much more, and there is a difference between what each one offered to keep their survival. But in the end, Naomi does something. And she does something that, according to the system, isn't also acceptable. It's something that raises eyebrows. And many Palestinian women also have to use the system to keep their survival. Many times you don't have a choice. Many times you don't have a way. We just imagine, when we say women liberation, we just straightforward think of women who are challenging the system. But sometimes women work through the system also. So if to give you some examples, I know young women who chose to get married very young, in the ages of 18, 19, just so they can have their freedom from the family. They choose to marry someone so they can move out from their parents' house, so people would stop talking about what she does, where she goes, and then the honor the honor of the family would be tainted. I know a woman who would choose to travel abroad to do a master's degree or even PhDs, even though they don't want it. It's not like something they dream about, but it's something they choose, so can they leave their community and have some freedom and have some choice in what they wear, how they walk, what they say, who the people they meet, etc. And even in the smallest ways, we can see it. Many women flirt with older men just so they can get their way. Honestly, I've seen this a million times already. Or the women who bring food to men in the workplace or in other places in the community, so they can get what they want from men. So it's not black and white. Yes, there are women who are challenging the system, and there are women who have no choice but to use the system to their advantage. And I think this is something that we as a Palestinian community and as women, we have to think about this and try not to attack everyone who's doing things that don't match our standards or don't match what we think. And this is a challenge to myself as well. Because if we look at the Bedouin woman, Yes, they do accept polygamy. They don't have any other choice. They need the men to survive. So it's something to think about together. So in this situation, who is the keeper, in your opinion? Was it Boaz, who agreed to marry Ruth, even though she was a Moabite? Was it Naomi, who suggested that Ruth can go seduce Boaz so she can get a status in society? Or was it even Ruth, since the beginning, vowing to leave her country, leave her people, leave her religion, and also sacrificing herself to go to the fields and work? Honestly, I think this question doesn't matter. Like, what matters is, what are we going to do with the system that put these women in this situation? It shouldn't have been the case that Ruth had to do this. It wouldn't have been the case that Ruth had to seduce Boaz in order to survive. It's ridiculous. And I think this is something we need to ask ourselves. What do we do? Am I my sister's keeper? Well, now obviously it's not. Don't be a keeper. Be a supporter of women, which means we have to fight together to dismantle the patriarchy. That means many people would lose their privileges, especially men, as gatekeepers, as leaders, as people who have status and power in our society, as people who have the last word and the authority. We should dismantle the patriarchy. I'm telling everyone, also to us as women, don't abuse other women. Don't use the free labor of women. Don't use the extra energy that we have to put in work just because men don't work. Like, when there's a shared projects between men and women, the women do most of the work. So don't do this. And and to go to darker sides, especially the men, don't cover up abuse in the church. It's something that's happening, and we know about it. Don't cover it up, because otherwise, we're not coming to your churches. And the last point maybe connects more to internationals. I've seen many panel sessions and many lectures by women who were talking to an international audience. And I also got this uncomfortable feeling where we see that the women are treated as token Palestinian women. Here you go. We have a Palestinian woman speaking. So we did our thing. But no, don't do that. When you start planning a conference, make sure that women are there from the beginning. They have equal voice in the process, because otherwise you'll still have token Palestinian women all the time, and your entire structure, your paradigm, won't be inclusive to women. So it's also for us women here in Palestine. Let's keep this in mind, that whenever we see a space that doesn't have women, either you step in, or you just you push other women to step in. And that's it. Thank you.
I'm immensely proud of Marah. Like, I'm overwhelmed by every time I hear her passion towards feminism, and which is backed up by Christian faith, which is probably the most right kind of feminism. I'm proud also of our next speaker, and I'm proud of them because I share with them friendships and sisterhoods. So please welcome with me. This is my first time calling her doctor, but this is the formal introduction. So please welcome Dr. Yara Burbara.
Dr. Yara Barbara. Yara studied medicine in Moldova. She is a last-year resident of family medicine, currently working at Clalit Health Services in Nazareth. She's also active among young Christians in her community as she navigates her true identity in the midst of a complex reality. Please, let's all welcome Dr. Yara Borbara.
Sorry, Marah, but I don't think you were being my keeper. That was so good, and I think you just made it harder to speak after you. Okay, so today, as you see, I will be speaking about the one and only COVID-19 pandemic. But I will not be speaking about the SARS-CoV-19 characteristics or the symptoms the infection causes or the diagnosis that a lot of you or most of you are by now I am aware of it, and I will be speaking more about the epidemiology and the vaccinations and how did each country of Israel and Palestine cope with the pandemic and what were the dynamics between the two. Okay, they instructed me, yes, okay. So the first